Welcome back to the channel. With FPL close to launching, this will be a video covering all the key updates for the upcoming season because there have been some massive changes like more transfers, changes to the bonus points system, even more chips at our disposal, and defensive contributions. All of that will be covered, as well as a few price reveals. But if you want to see dedicated videos and podcasts for even more prices that are announced by FPL, then let me know down in the comment section below. And perhaps you want to see a live stream covering the FPL launch once the game releases. Drop a like on this podcast, also smash the subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, whether it's FPL, UCL Fantasy, or other fantasy football games I cover on this channel. I recently talked about Club World Cup Fantasy, and over the past few years, I've also talked about the Euros and the World Cup as well, and it has been a blast covering every single one of them. And ahead of this upcoming season, that will now be maybe the fifth full season in terms of content for this channel, and hopefully you enjoy it even more this time. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. One of the first changes that was announced over the weekend was the fact that we'll have 2 times the amount of chips, and basically the wildcard, bench boost, free hit, and triple captain will have one for the first half of the season between game weeks 1 to 19, and then one for the second half between game weeks 20 all the way through to the final game week in 38. So that's quite simple. I want to see what you think down in the comment section below. Perhaps a game week 2 free hit, for example, could be quite appealing on paper, where you can double or triple up on Arsenal against Leeds United and then avoid them because they have a very tough start in the first 6 game weeks, as I'll show you very soon. But that's one sort of idea that immediately springs to mind for a lot of fantasy Premier League managers in the process. And perhaps you want to use a chip in game week 1. And to be honest, I used a triple captain in game week 2 last season on Erling Haaland. It worked fairly well against Ipswich Town, scoring a hat-trick. But of course, those who saved it for Mohamed Salah in a double game week got even more points in the process. But moving on to other changes, we are going to get additional transfers to factor in that really important international tournament in the African Cup of Nations. So all managers will be topped up to the maximum possible number of 5 free transfers in game week 16 ahead of AFCON, regardless of how many they had before. And FPL actually have a few things on the website, so they've got some recommendations in terms of strategy, but this is what they posted as an article. So managers in Fantasy Premier League will be given 5 extra transfers. The tournament, which involves players from 24 African countries, takes place midway through the Premier League season, and it will commence on the 21st of December in 2025, and it finishes on the 18th of January in 2026. So in terms of FPL, this would mean game week 17 to 22, but some players might leave for their international duties earlier, so they could miss their game week 16 fixtures as well. So to account for this scenario, FPL are going to grant us additional transfers, and this allows you to react to any injury, suspensions, and also, of course, in this sort of scenario, players dropping out and focusing on their African Cup of Nations duties. And a sound strategy, which is stated at the bottom of this article, is to use up all your free transfers by game week 15, and then you're given 5 free transfers anyway in the following game week. So you can be really aggressive just before the African Cup of Nations begins. And this article actually continues, and it says the following. This would mean that along with your usual free transfer for game week 16, you would benefit from 4 more of them. So by contrast, if you banked, let's say, your transfers in game weeks 14 and 15 and went into game week 16 with 3 of them, you would only be given 2 additional transfers. Yet those that use all of their transfers beforehand will be given 4 additional ones, and that gives them a little advantage, not just during the AFCON period, but also just beforehand. So I think that really helps you in terms of being aggressive and playing FPL in a slightly different way to the rest. And that means the template also deviates a little bit more. We have a bit more variation and diversity in the play. So I actually think that's a pretty nice addition to FPL this season to account for the African Cup of Nations, but maybe you have a different viewpoint. There's always pros and cons behind every single additional feature, but I do think that's fairly solid overall. In terms of key players that are leaving, Salah is obviously the standout one, but he isn't the only big name, because you've also got Marmoush from Manchester City, Brian Mbeumo, who's set to join Manchester United, Visser from Brentford, and he is linked to several clubs at the moment like Newcastle, but if any transfers do happen, they will be covered on this channel. There's also Nicholas Jackson, Ismail Assar. There's multiple key players in Fantasy Premier League, particularly in the midfield and forward line, that could be affected. And of course, we can't forget Reynate Nuri, who recently joined Manchester City. But moving on to something else now, we have a new rule for the assist. And I'll keep this very brief, even though this article goes in quite a lot of depth. It shows you various examples. So I suggest you go to the website, the Premier League one that is, and check out all the video examples of assists that weren't given last season, but they would be now with the new rules. And according to them, 41 additional assists would be granted with this new system in place. So what is a fantasy assist? So fantasy assists are often awarded to the player from the goal-scoring team who has the final touch before a goal is scored, and they are awarded the FPL points, which is free in this case. The final touch can be a pass, an inadvertent touch, an effort on goal, or winning a penalty, or even a free kick. So the new rules for the upcoming campaign, the definition of a fantasy assist has been simplified to better recognize players for their contributions to goals and to reduce the degree of subjectivity involved, so that's easier for FPL managers to see when their player is going to be awarded those assist points. And it says here, intended destination. This is the key thing here. This is the most significant change to the rules. Until now, players have not been awarded a fantasy assist if their pass or cross was deflected by an opponent away from the intended target or destination. And then it gives you examples there of Bernardo Silva, for example, and there's multiple others on the website, so I'd highly recommend you check it out. But I think that's probably one of the most positive updates of them all. And in terms of the bonus point system, we did see a big change last season where goalkeepers and defenders were heavily impacted, and essentially any forward who would score a goal would get 2 or 3 bonus points, and the likes of Chris Wood and Matheus Cunha were prominent examples. They accumulated 41 bonus points over the course of the season, and they were classified as forwards, although Matheus Cunha will not be in that position this season. But on screen you can see a description of the bonus point system, and I'm just going to read out the key points here because the main things we want to focus on are the changes to the bonus points in the upcoming campaign. So the players with the top 3 BPS are given an additional bonus. So player 1 with the most or the highest BPS is given 3 points. The one in second will get 2 points, and in third they will get 1 point. So it's a bit like a podium in Formula 1. And in terms of any ties, we do get this sort of scenario. So for first place, players 1 and 2 will receive 3 points each if they have the same BPS, and player 3 will receive 1 point. If there is a tie for second place, then player 1 will receive 3 points, and players 2 and 3 will receive 2 points each. And the final scenario, if there is a tie for third place, player 1 will receive 3 points, player 2 will get 2 points, and players 3 and 4 will be awarded 1 point each. But what we want to focus on are the changes, and we do have one in terms of goalkeeper saves. So in previous seasons, goalkeepers would earn 2 points in the BPS for each save they made. This season, however, the shot location will be the determining factor. So a goalkeeper will now earn 3 points in the BPS if the shot was taken from inside the penalty area, or 2 points in the BPS if the shot is outside the box, which I think is a very logical and smart move there. A penalty save will result in a minimal reduction from 9 points in the BPS to 8 this season, added to the 3 BPS for saving a shot that was taken from inside the box. This gives a total of 11 BPS for such an action. And then we get goal line clearances. Even Cucurella in the Club World Cup, he did a few of them. To recognise the importance of a goal line clearance and how crucial it could be to a match result, a player will now earn 9 points in the BPS as opposed to 3 points, which is a massive jump, but I do think that is a fair reflection, and goal line clearances aren't something you see every day, that's for sure. But going into the next section, we have penalty goals as well. A new penalty goal scored metric has now been introduced to differentiate from other goals scored, so a player will earn 12 points in the BPS for scoring a penalty, regardless of his position in fantasy. In previous seasons, forwards earned 24 points, midfielders got 18, and defenders earned 12 BPS for scoring a penalty. Those latter numbers still apply to all non-penalty goals in 2025 to 26, but in terms of penalties, there have been some key changes. And then we go on to successful tackles, and this is in the build-up to the discussion about defensive contributions. The metric used to judge tackles has been changed to increase the likelihood of players being rewarded in the BPS and getting 2 bonus points. So the 2 BPS points previously awarded for each successful tackles net statistic, which was the total of tackles won minus tackles lost, that has been simplified now. So this season, each tackle won in a match will be rewarded with 2 BPS points, and I immediately think of the likes of Moises Caicedo, who would be very appealing in the BPS actually from now on. Now next up actually are positional changes, and we have a few surprises you could say. Jarrod Bowen is now a forward. You get other ones that were quite predictable, like Lewis Skelly being reclassified from a midfielder to a defender. I think all of us expected that. Lewis Potter as well at Brentford. He is also a defender. Ndai, instead of being a forward for Everton, he will now be a midfielder. And Ryan Sessegnon will now be a midfielder and not the defender he was last season, where towards the end of the campaign, he was quite overpowered actually with his really offensive positions as a winger essentially, and he's no longer playing as a left back for Fulham. So just to kind of help with the graphic, the positions you see on the left, so close to where it says the club, that is the new position, and of course you have the old position on the right hand side. Then we have Cody Gakpo. He is now a midfielder in FPL. Marmoush is also going to be reclassified from a forward to a midfielder. Matheus Nunes is now a defender, which makes a lot of sense. He has predominantly played as a right back for Manchester City in the Champions League, Club World Cup, and also in the Premier League. Nico O'Reilly is also a defender for Manchester City, and Matheus Cunha is now a midfielder, which a lot of people expected. Even websites like FPL.team also had Cunha down as a midfielder from the get-go. But Jarrod Bowen being a forward, I mean, he has played there for West Ham in a 3-5-2 formation, so it does make a lot of sense, and he has played down the middle on a lot of occasions actually for the Hammers, but that might have been the biggest shock to the system, or maybe the most important one in fantasy terms. And the final one is Rodrigo Gomez, and by the way, Wolves have like 3 Gomezes, so don't be confused about them. But instead of being a midfielder, he is now classified as a defender. He usually plays as a right wing back under Vitor Pereira. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below about the positional changes. João Pedro remains a forward. Now, defensive contributions is one of my favourite additions to Fantasy Premier League this season. So how does it work? In this campaign, any defender who reaches a combined total of 10 clearances, blocks, interceptions and tackles, so on the FPL app it will say CBIT, in a single match they will score 2 FPL points. It's similar to the fact that when a goalkeeper makes 3 saves, they earn an extra 1 point in Fantasy Premier League. But unlike save points, defensive contribution points will be capped at 2 points per match. So if a defender makes 20 CBIT in a match, they would still collect just 2 points, not 4, although they might get further rewards through the bonus point system, which I just talked about earlier in this video. And then it has a few examples there, but what we want to focus on are some of the key changes in terms of midfielders and forwards with the extra ball recoveries. And this is something I never thought would be added to FPL, even in this sort of way, compared to UCL Fantasy, the Euros, and also these other UEFA games I've covered on my channel. So to recognise the defensive work done by midfielders and forwards, including pressing and transitioning defence into attack, they get extra awards that defenders don't. So in addition to their clearances, blocks, interceptions and tackles, their ball recoveries will also count towards their total of defensive contributions. And to be honest, I would have liked to see this apply to defenders as well, because it gives you another dimension, even more so than we get now, and it's good to see. We now finally have to make a decision about going for a centre-back or an attacking full-back, but I think ball recovery should be applied to every position except goalkeepers, of course, but that's another matter entirely. These recoveries include a range of actions that defensive midfielders in particular are good at, like being first to a loose ball. Notably, what they do with the ball after securing it is taken into account when awarding a recovery. The player will often be rewarded for starting a counter-attack or for securing stable possession for their team by making the first controlled pass after a moment where the two sides have fought for the ball. Because midfielders and forwards can benefit from these extra recovery points and actions, they have to get more defensive contributions in total to earn their 2 FPL points. They have to get 12 defensive contributions, whereas defenders only need 10, which does make a little bit of sense, to be honest, but I have to say with ball recoveries in general, I personally would like to see that applied to defenders as well, and I think those that play UCL Fantasy might share my opinion. But look at the difference with some of the key defenders and midfielders that we're going to see this season, particularly in the kind of defensive midfielder role and the centre-backs. So Tarkowski would have earned 44 defensive contribution points last season, and that would take his tally to 149 FPL points overall. Even Bednarek, who was quite terrible when Southampton were absolutely shambolic defensively, he would have earned 40 points to take his total to 100. Even Dean Howson, who just joined Real Madrid, he would have earned 38 points to take his tally to 142. And Murillo, has been an absolute tank for Nottingham Forest. With 38 defensive contribution points, he would have earned 168 points last season, which was more than the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold and all these premiums like Gabriel, Saliba, and all these options you can talk about, even though they would have earned some defensive contribution points as well, of course. Wout Faes, as bad as he was, he earned 34 defensive contribution points last season. Even Lacroix for Crystal Palace, who has a decent XG figure, by the way, and that's something I'll talk about in future videos, he would have earned 148 points last season with this new system in place. Even Dara O'Shea got 34 defensive contribution points, and Branthwaite, essentially any Everton centre-back, they're going to get a lot of them, even under David Moyes. And then Nathan Collins, who played every single minute for Brentford last season, he would have earned 159 points, despite the fact that Brentford didn't keep that many clean sheets. And then Kilman, another one, very solid and dependable with the minutes, games played, and defensive contributions. He also would have earned 30. But it doesn't stop there, because midfielders are also taken into account. And just look at Moises Caicedo with 42 points. So instead of 98, he would have earned 140 for the campaign. Elliot Anderson is quite underrated in this regard. He would have got 143. You've got Joao Gomez in there, Idrissa Gana Gueye, Christian Nørgaard, the new Arsenal signing, Baleba for Brighton, who has been a revelation for them in the last campaign, Lewis Cook, and of course Gravenberch, who is one of the standouts and also best midfielders from the previous season as well. He would have earned 30 points, so that would actually make him more viable in Fantasy Premier League. So as you can see, a lot of these defensive midfielders and centre-backs are much more appealing with the defensive contributions being added to FPL. Now, at this point, I haven't seen any graphics or stats indicating which forwards would have benefited from the changes to the bonus point system and how the defensive actions would be reflected in their additional points, but that's something we need to monitor in the upcoming season. And there's also this graphic and stat about the impact of defensive contributions on defender standings. So Milenkovic would have been the top scoring defender with 171 points overall. Murillo would have been narrowly behind with 168. Van Dijk, Gvardiol, and Nathan Collins would be in the top 5, followed by Daniel Munoz, Trent Alexander-Arnold, James Tarkowski, Lacroix, and Howson. But as you can see there, Trent, despite all his attacking threat and bonus points potential, only 6 points for defensive contributions. So maybe that would mean Van Dijk is more appealing than Kerkez or Frimpong in the upcoming campaign. And that would be great to see, actually, to have that sort of decision instead of always picking the attacking fullback. So now we're going to the kind of different sections here, talking about pricing and points. So last season, the players to have reached 200 plus points were Mohamed Salah, who set the all-time Premier League record with 344. Bryan Mbeumo was second with 236. Cole Palmer was third. Then Alexander Isak and Chris Wood completed the top 5. No other player scored 200 points or more in FPL last season. And in terms of the top forwards, Alexander Isak had 29 attacking returns, Haaland had 25, Watkins and Visser both shared 24, Chris Wood had 23, and Mateus Cunha, another bonus points machine, had 22. So in terms of goals and assists combined, these were the best forwards in FPL last season. And in terms of the Golden Glove, that was shared by Matt Sells and David Raya, who both had 13, and also Raya won the previous one for Arsenal. But we had one price reveal in goal, and it was for Jordan Pickford, the highest scoring goalkeeper last season. He is now going to be 5.5 million, and I can't really complain about that whatsoever. He was always going to be priced at 5 million minimum, but based on his returns in the last couple of seasons, and also this slightly different system with the goalkeepers and saves, I think Pickford can score even more points in the upcoming campaign. But I do think Everton were more solid defensively under Sean Dyche than they are currently under David Moyes. Let's also talk about the fixtures. So in Game Week 1, these are the games for every single club here. So Arsenal will face Man United away, and that will be a very tricky test indeed. Aston Villa will face Newcastle at home. Bournemouth have a very tricky visit to the Premier League champions Liverpool. Brentford will face Nottingham Forest away. Brighton will face Fulham at home. Burnley have a trip to Tottenham, whilst Chelsea face Crystal Palace at home. Everton will face Leeds away, and you've also got a few other fixtures here and there, like Man City facing Wolves away. Sunderland will face West Ham at home, and the rest, of course, I've covered. Otherwise, I'd just be repeating myself. No one wants to see that, do they? But in terms of the fixture difficulty rating for the first 3 game weeks, you can see here a few patterns immediately emerge. So Arsenal face Man United away, Leeds at home, and Liverpool away in the opening 3 game weeks of the season. And I have to say that's a very tricky start in my opinion, but it only gets worse if you extend this to the first 6 game weeks. Aston Villa also face Brentford away and Crystal Palace at home in the opening 3 games, whilst Bournemouth will have Wolves at home and Tottenham away. Brentford will have Aston Villa at home and Sunderland away, so I think their opening fixtures are quite reasonable actually. Brighton will face Everton away and Man City at home in game weeks 2 and 3 respectively. Burnley will face Sunderland at home and Man United away, but the opening fixtures are quite tough if you go through to the next 6 to 8 game weeks overall, but at least Sunderland in game week 2 looks very appealing for them. Chelsea will face West Ham away and Fulham at home, and I have to say Chelsea probably have the best fixtures of any of the top clubs in the Premier League. Leeds will face Arsenal away and Newcastle at home in the opening 3, whilst Liverpool have a very tough start in this period, facing Newcastle away and Arsenal at home, but afterwards it gets much better for the Reds. Man City will face Tottenham at home and Brighton away, whilst Man United have one of the most difficult starts of any club, facing Fulham away and Burnley at home in the opening 3. That doesn't seem too bad, but then you've got the likes of Man City and all these other tough fixtures on the horizon. Newcastle face Liverpool at home and Leeds away. Nottingham Forest will face Crystal Palace away and West Ham at home. And then Sunderland have the best start of any newly promoted club. So after West Ham at home, they face Burnley away and then Brentford at home. So I think they'll be quite satisfied with their opening fixtures. Tottenham will face Man City away and Bournemouth at home in game weeks 2 and 3, whilst West Ham have Chelsea at home and Nottingham Forest away, and Wolves will have Bournemouth away and Everton at home. Now, if you had to rank the best fixtures over the first 5 game weeks, it would be Aston Villa, Brentford, Chelsea, Sunderland, and West Ham in no particular order. And as you can see there, I think some of these teams offer really good value in certain positions. I think an Aston Villa defender would be viable, and maybe Morgan Rogers depending on his pricing. With Chelsea, you might also be looking at Cucurella or Colwill in that defensive line, and then the likes of Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, or perhaps even Joao Pedro. So doubling or tripling up on Chelsea would be viable. And despite all the outgoings for Brentford, I think they made some good signings like Kelleher, so they can still offer reasonable value in different positions. So I wouldn't discount them completely. And for West Ham, I'll be quite honest, the only one I'm really looking at is Jarrod Bowen, but classified as a forward, and it also depends a lot on his pricing. That might put me off a little bit because I was more appealed by him as a midfielder. And for Sunderland, there's actually quite a few decent picks in there that I'll cover in future videos. Perhaps you want to see one specifically focusing on newly promoted clubs. But just like we have the best fixtures, we also have the worst. And I think Arsenal, Brighton, Crystal Palace and Man United have the worst of it over the first 5 game weeks. And as you can see, Arsenal face Liverpool away, Man City at home and Man United away in the opening 5. And even Forest at home won't be easy. And Leeds will be very motivated in game week 2. And I think Crystal Palace, you've got Chelsea and Aston Villa away, but there is Sunderland at home that does compensate quite significantly. I think Arsenal and Man United have the worst fixtures, period, and no one can really argue that. But even Brighton don't have the easiest of starts, facing Man City at home, Tottenham at home, but they did get a 4-1 win in game week 38 last season against the Europa League champions, Tottenham Hotspur. Now moving on to the next slide here, focusing specifically on Chelsea, I think they're one of the best teams to kind of pile up on from game week 1 onwards, which is something I just discussed really recently. You've also got Joao Pedro and Delap being new signings there in the forward line for Chelsea. Jackson is linked with a move away, but I have to say Joao Pedro could be the main starter up front, and he can play multiple positions, and he had an immediate impact in the Club World Cup, scoring a brace in the semi-final against his boyhood club, Fluminense, and also in the final against Paris Saint-Germain in the 3-0 win in matchday 7 there. And here you can see, of course, once again, Arsenal's upcoming fixtures being highlighted there, and also their attacking depth, which I still think is a bit lacking, but they just signed Noni Madueke for £52 million, and Gyökeres is on the verge of being completed, but that has been ages now. I mean, by the time he's announced, I mean, FPL might have started already. But then we've also got a few other signings that I think Arsenal would need, a left winger like Eze, Xavi Simons, Rodrigo. I think 2 of them would be ideal, but Arsenal will probably only end up with one of them. And here you can see the newly promoted clubs and the contrasting starts there. I think Leeds are quite mixed bag. They're not too shabby. Sunderland have quite appealing fixtures overall, and Burnley have a very rough start in my opinion. Even though Tottenham and Man United aren't classified as that difficult, they could be much better in this upcoming season. I'd be very surprised if both of them falter to the way they did in the previous campaign where they finished 15th and 17th respectively. And you may have different thoughts on that, of course, and we can talk about that across all my social media links, which can be found in the description below, the Discord server, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, continuing the conversation beyond the comment section, which is always a pleasure. And also in the live chats, there'll be plenty of deadline streams and reaction streams in the upcoming campaign, so stay tuned for those when the Premier League begins. Salah, Haaland, Isak and Palmer. You see the upcoming fixtures for the respective clubs there, Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle and Chelsea, and some of those prices have been revealed actually for 3 of those 4 players. And just look at Salah's amazing record, always scoring over 200 FPL points, and over the years, this has been his pricing. What is his price this season? Well, it's the highest it's ever been, and there is no question about it. 14.5 million is more than justified, and some people were debating 15 million. Would it be 14 million, which FPL.team predicted, but it is somewhere in the middle at 14.5 million, and he remains a midfielder. Florian Wirtz has also come in at 8.5 million. I think that's a little bit too cheap, to be honest, and he easily could have been 9.5 to 10 million, but it is a new league. He might take a bit of a while to adapt, but I think Wirtz will hit the ground running for Liverpool in a record-breaking transfer. And Erling Haaland has been priced at 11.5 million, 14, 15 million, but this time round he comes in once again at 14 million, even though certain websites predicted 13.5 million. Erling Haaland at 14 is still quite reasonable, and people can't really complain about that too much. I think the downturn in form and also the points does stem a lot from the injuries he had last season. If he stays fit, he's going to guarantee you 200 plus points, and he could rival the likes of Mohamed Salah, who has a massive advantage over him anyway because of the position he plays in as a midfielder. But last season, no one competed with Salah as the Premier League Player of the Year. Reinier Nuri also comes in at 6 million, which was to be expected. FPL.team got that absolutely spot on. And Alexander Isak was 7 million, 8 million, 8.5, but this time round he does reach double digits. 10.5 million signifies a 2 million increase for one of the best strikers in world football, who is linked with Liverpool. But we all expect him to stay at Newcastle now, with Ekitike nearing a move to Liverpool there for a massive fee, 80 million euros, and a lot of transfers are going on with some of the best clubs in world football. But Newcastle boasted some great options in the midfield, like Jacob Murphy, who was really underrated last season. He could come in at 5.5 to 6 million, but I have to say he has to be minimum 6 million based on his contributions last season. 159 points is nothing to scoff at. Even Harvey Barnes, off the bench many times, got 139. Anthony Gordon was quite disappointing, only 124 points. We could see him drop in price to 7 million this time round. And the new signing, Anthony Elanga, who will be the highest scoring midfielder this time round. Could it be Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, 2 of the best central midfielders in the Premier League? Or will it be one of these attacking wingers and attacking midfielders for Newcastle United? That remains to be seen. And another question I want to pose to you is, who is the best signing, not just in FPL terms, but also overall? Maybe you think it'll be Florian Wirtz at Liverpool, maybe Gyökeres, if that's ever completed. That would be bloody nice, I have to say, especially for Arsenal fans who have been really patient for that striker. Could it be João Pedro, Liam Delap, Kirkes, Reinier Nuri? The list goes on and on. Cherki, Reinders. We've had some really good signings happen in the Premier League so far, at least on paper. Not all of them will work out, but that's where the comment section and all the different social media links in the description will come into play. We can continue this conversation and also develop ideas for Fantasy Premier League, use your fantasy, and much more. It'll be a pleasure to have you on board for the upcoming season with all those deadline streams, reaction streams, and all the videos that will be coming your way. Transfer tips, best wildcard teams, team selections, and if you want to see other types of content, then let me know as well. I'm open to new ideas and broadening the horizon in terms of content. But once more, I'm going to welcome you for the upcoming season in FPL, and it will be a blast from Game Week 1. We have reached the end of this video and podcast covering the key updates and changes to Fantasy Premier League this season, but it won't be the last piece of content you'll see, because FPL will be launching imminently. The game has been updating since last night, I believe. So if you go to the website, this message will pop up. But maybe by the time this video is published, the game has already launched. And just keep your eyes peeled for even more videos and live streams over the next couple of months. It will be a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, whether it's FPL, UCL Fantasy, or a different game maybe next summer. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships. Further links to my videos, Mugsman of the Pucks, the Discord server, FPL League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you very soon for more FPL videos and the launch of Fantasy Premier League, which is imminent anytime now, and I wish you all the best of luck for the upcoming season.